the truck and gonna stand up. Rep the Midwest, get it hype, this the ramp up. Ay, the ramp up, never hit the brakes. Break it down day to day, show the people what it takes. The ramp up, the ramp up.
Welcome to the Ramp Up. I'm your host, Rich Cruel. I got my co-host here, Bryan Rakowski. This is episode 4, and we have a very fun guest today. Someone we've known for a little while, Will Jenkins, CEO and founder of Journey Delivers. Man, we're happy to have you here, Will.
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing good. Good, man.
It's good to see you, dude.
Yeah, good to see you too.
I don't know the last time that I was able to get more than 5 minutes of your time.
Oh,
busy dude.
It's
been
really,
years.
Dude, it's been a minute, man, since we were in the same place consistently.
Yeah. Yes.
It was really good to see all that manifest last year, though. That made me so happy. I was so hyped. I was like, yes, my guys.
It was
I kept
wild.
seeing you pop around everywhere throughout the whole conference. So
We're always best dressed, so it's easy to pick you out.
Oh, well, that's very kind. Yeah, I appreciate you, man. Trying to stay sharp.
Yeah. It was fun too to be in there, just seeing how many people we ran into that everyone knew. I mean, that was a fun time. We're looking forward to going back. We touched on that in episode 1, but it was a hell of a week. So
Yeah, busy.
Yeah,
busy.
Well, hey, today we're talking about culture and what we're looking for in terms of when we're trying to hire. This is your wheelhouse, man. You own a recruiting and talent company, and the training aspect, something we want to get into too. But before we get started on all that, maybe you just want to give a little bit of your background to everyone, similar to ours, but
Totally. Yeah. So I've been in the space the last 11 years. I started at Coyote, which is where I met you two absolute legends, in January of 2014. Prior to that, I had been in sales, but nothing in transportation. So I didn't really know what in the world I was doing, but I had a couple buddies that both of y'all know, Adrian Dodds and Martin Viaski, and they were doing really well in customer sales. And they're like, dude, you need to come here and check this place out. So started in carrier sales, did that for 2 years, moved over to the customer side. I managed a group. This was the year of 2016, so January through December of 2016. And then I got recruited by an organization, Transport America. I went there to be a director. They had recently purchased a brokerage. And so it's like, this will be a really cool career opportunity. We'll have assets, learn a ton. And it was a great organization, but just not what I was looking for long term. I thought there were probably more things that I could go and achieve in my career. And so met up with some old colleagues from Coyote who ended up being business partners, which is pretty sick. And we launched MoLo. So started working on that business in April of 2017. We launched officially July of 2017. And as y'all know, when you're a startup brokerage, you got your hands in everything. So best experience I ever could have had, like recruiting. I built out our training program. I trained the first 200 people that we hired, which was sick. Really stressful, but learned a lot. Yeah. It was really cool. And so, the culmination of that experience, having a successful exit, ArcBest purchased the business in November 2021, leading our sales team, learning a lot about go-to-market strategy, things of that nature, brought me to the business I have today, which is Journey. So we do recruiting, consulting, and training. All of our clients are brokerages, and then some asset-based players and some asset-based brokerages, but a lot of really strong, incredible organizations. And so we help them find really top talent, incredible people to help them build their businesses. We come in and help with go-to-market strategy, things of that nature, compensation structure. And then on the training side, a big passion of mine is training, and specifically sales training. So we do live sales boot camps, things of that nature. And then we've recorded a ton of training that brokerages license to kind of get their team up to speed.
Yeah, how'd you guys come up with the idea on the recording and the actual someone trying to sell to a program, essentially? I don't think I've ever seen anyone do that before. No. It's super unique, creative.
Yeah.
Come up with that.
So there's two main ways that we distribute training content today. The first is we'll record it similar to this and run through a topic, and then people get access to it and they can take notes and do it through our LMS to kind of upskill themselves. The second is a partnership I developed with an organization that built the AI role-playing tool. And so I met them early 2023. I fostered a relationship with the two gentlemen that started the business. And so now we're helping to bring that product to market in the supply chain and logistics space. And so we have a bunch of brokerages that license the AI role-playing tool. They take our courses, and then they put their reps in the environment. And in the environment, they can call Rich Cruel, the director of transportation at ABC company, and role play back and forth, cold calls, warm calls, discovery calls, things like that. But for me, if we're going to be the training organization and have that be an important part of our business, you can't just give people the content. You need to give them a place to practice. And so I felt that was an important part of being able to differentiate ourselves in the space.
I mean, wouldn't you agree that, I mean, we've all had managers or directors or whoever that would go do mock interviews, but wouldn't you agree that it's probably better having AI do it rather than like someone who's trying to pretend to be somebody else and knowing what kind of questions to ask or how to like create this fake persona? I mean, what does that look like?
That's a good question. So I think there are some people that are better at creating role play scenarios and are better at setting it up. So they can play a tough shipper, an easy one. They can work through scenarios and give you objections that you're ready to work through, or throw you a curveball and you really got to think. That's like how you learn as a seller.
Yeah.
You have been selling for a long time. You've been selling a long time. You know what you know because you went through a lot of repetitions. So now when a customer says something or you're working through something with the carrier, you're like, okay, I've heard this before. You pivot, you listen to what they're saying and tailor it, right? You can only do that in a live environment with a person if that person is willing to kind of roll with the punches and make it a little easy sometimes, a little tough sometimes, like, pull those levers.
Yeah.
With AI, we can pull the levers internally and make the bot harder all the time.
Almost like levels. You're gamifying it.
100%. Or make it easier, right? Like you got a brand new person that's like, we give you a couple layups to get comfortable. Now you go work with these harder bots. So I agree, unless you've got like the right training partner, an individual that understands how to like engage people, it's super tough to do.
Well, you have a different conversation with a decision maker from a Coca-Cola as opposed to mom and pop down the street. So
different.
How do you train AI to do that? I mean,
Good question.
Yep.
So behind the scenes, there are a lot of inputs that we work through to make the bots respond the way that we would expect a director of transportation or a transportation manager in that particular style of customer. So if it's a large multi-billion-dollar enterprise shipper, they're going to be more complex. They'll give you more objections. They're probably going to be harder to work with initially. They are going to have higher expectations. And it's all about how you put the information in to make sure you actually get the results that you're looking for.
Yeah. I always thought too, it was a little awkward when you're role playing with someone you know really well. I remember at Coyote, Drew Herpick was going around testing some of the top sellers, and I'm not going to put him on blast who failed miserably, but he's like, how the hell is this person one of the top sellers here? Yeah. He couldn't even like say one sentence without faltering. And it's just because it's an awkward thing. You know them.
It can be awkward.
So I think that program is pretty cool, unique, and I'm sure it'll be really successful, man. That's nice.
Can we shift a little bit? What I found really interesting hearing about, creating Journey is this idea of the academy on top of, your general staffing and helping employers and helping individuals. At what point did you decide like this is a good marriage between the two?
Yep. So early on, the idea to start the recruiting side of the business came out of necessity because I had to not compete. And I actually really liked that because it made me think about something I could do that wasn't brokerage, right? Like I know brokerage. I understand how to build a brokerage, have great relationships, access to incredible talent, access to capital. I want to go build a brokerage. We can go do that, right? But I couldn't. And so my thought was, what can I do that allows me to stay close to the industry, use some of what I've learned, and then provide value to people that I've got good relationships with. So the first thing to me was like, I know I can build a recruiting company, right? Like I can get into that and learn it. And so that was the first part of it. But with the academy, I just love training. Love training people. I've been doing it since I was 18. So my first job in sales, I used to sell Cutco kitchen cutlery. Changed my life. Taught me so much about like cold calls and how to handle objections, all these different things. But I started training people my first summer. So like new reps would come and sit with me and go to appointments. So like I've been doing this for 17 years, right? Just like training people how to sell. So in my head, get the recruiting arm out first, build really good content for people to license. And long term, it's really, I would say, collaborative for organizations to look at us and say, okay, they're not just a recruiting organization. They also consult. They also have a training solution. So I think it differentiates us in the space, which is the main reason to put them both together.
Yeah, I don't know how many people I've heard say I love training people and I love sales too. So yeah, very unique.
Love it.
It's also just a great business plan too, because when companies slow on hiring, the freight cycles up and down, they're going to need to train additional. So well done. And also we talked our first episode about marketing and just wanted to give you some props there.
Thank you.
We mentioned you too, but you do a great job of that, man. So before we kind of get into characteristics we're looking for when we're hiring, like from a marketing standpoint. How do you guys approach that? Because you put out a lot of content, it's very valuable, but you do a great job with it, man. So how do you guys view that as an organization?
First of all, thank you. Appreciate it. Shout out Erin Sweeney, head of marketing. She's the GOAT. So Erin and I went to college together. We went to Illinois Wesleyan. She had an incredibly successful career in advertising with some of the largest agencies in the world and crushed it. So we had a relationship, like knew each other, supported each other as Wesleyan alum, but like we never worked together. But we're like, that person's doing their thing. Like, it's really cool to see, right?
Yeah.
So when I was considering what Journey was going to be, her and I started talking about her helping to an extent to build the brand and messaging and things of this nature. And she just brings such incredibly high level, really, really strategic thinking to brand and messaging. And so a lot of what we're doing is her taking a strategic lens from working with some of the biggest brands in the world and saying, how do we apply that from day one to Journey so that we are not like everyone else? And so we just talked about this the other day. We have no desire to be like the rest of the players in the game. We want to stand out. Our color, look how bright this is. This is bananas, right? Like,
yeah, it looks great, man.
As a fellow bright company with the orange, I mean, I love it, man.
Yeah, it's different. And so I think I've learned a lot the last year or so, and then a little bit before that, personal branding. Like, I do a ton of stuff, just understanding how to talk about my story and like be authentic, because who I am on LinkedIn is the same person that y'all know that you've known for the last 10 years, right? I just want to be who I am. Yeah. And I think people resonate with that. And so in business, especially today, people want to buy from people they feel they know. And so if you can start to get to know people, even if it's from afar, LinkedIn, podcasts, all this stuff, I think it helps. And we get a ton of inbound traction. And I'm like the cold email guy. Like, bro, I don't have any problem making cold calls and emails. But the engine is working. Yeah. And so kudos to the team. We also have another team member. Her name's Valeria. She's incredible, helps Erin with all the content, graphics, things of that nature. So you have to have a really good team. And it's a machine.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been struggling with that a little bit out of the gate because, as a startup, you don't really have a marketing budget. You want to, how important marketing is, and I think that's lost in logistics sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And we want to stand out in that capacity, but you have finite amount of funds. I mean, and so where do you,
You're looking at the marketing department here, and it's stuff done after hours too. Yeah. Weekends, nights, all that kind of stuff. So,
dude, the one thing I'll say is like, everything seems daunting when you try to take it all on. And I know what it's like to be building a brokerage. Mm-hmm. Customers have questions, carriers have questions, you're supporting your people, you're figuring out finances, you're making sure everybody gets paid, all these things. Mm-hmm. Then there's this other stuff that's like kind of nice to have, but a little bit at a time is certainly worth it to start to build that presence like y'all are doing. And like over time, it'll get easier because you'll be able to reuse stuff that you've done. Yeah. But the focus that you're taking today to say, man, we just got to get out there and do some stuff. Yeah. Is so important. Like, I wouldn't downplay that at all.
I love that.
Appreciate that.
Because I always struggled with wanting to sit back and see the whole picture and how you get from here to there and know everything at once, all in between that. But you can't. I mean, you can try, but it's not going to work, right? You just got to get out there and start. And I always say, if you put your head down every day and just do the work, then the rest will come. It'll get 100%. Easier. You'll learn more. You have a good network of people to learn from too. And you'll slowly figure that out. And that's what we're going through like every day. It's like, we're taking these different problems and trying to figure it out, and then just like learning on the go.
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of companies use this mantra too, but we're always saying 1% better every day. You just stack it, and that comes with like the marketing presence too. We've slowly put more and more resources into it, and the growth is cool. Like it's been a really fun year. I can imagine and want to hear more about the story with MoLo too, because I mean, I'm sure you guys had some very come to Jesus moments. I've listened to Andrew's podcast about the startup with him talking to Matt Vogerson. I mean, it was really cool to hear their story and you being part of that behind the scenes. I'm sure there were some very long, like stressful days and nights.
Yes.
Yeah.
To say the least.
Yeah. So this journey, easier to get off the ground because you've already kind of taken that leap. So you knew the risks somewhat.
Totally. Yeah, it is easier to start a second company than it is to do it the first time. Yeah. And there are just lessons that you learn throughout the process that you can use, like things that I still make a ton of mistakes, but like just things that you can avoid because you've seen it before and you have a different level of confidence. Like, I was 27 when we started MoLo, so it was a baby. And started Journey, I was 34, so 7 years later.
Yeah.
And, well, 33. So 6 years later. And the amount of lessons throughout that time, like, we built $1 billion brokerage. It's kind of a big deal. It's like a lot of things that go down with that, right? And I don't know during the time that any of us appreciated the amount of exposure that we got to high level decision making in an influential organization that's now like top of the top in the space, because we just like had our heads down doing the work.
Yeah.
And now in the second venture, I'm like, that was really important. Use those things to be a little bit more effective in what you do. Different organization, but like the business concepts are very similar.
So when you guys were scaling up, I mean, we're jumping around a little topics here, but culture, big thing about what we talked about is when we scale, we always say we don't want to lose the culture. It's a challenge everyone faces when they get to a certain level, getting the buy-in from en masse. And when the masses get larger, it's tough. How did you guys kind of keep the culture as you guys grew so fast? Because I mean, I only heard good things about people inside the walls at MoLo. So, I mean, kudos to you guys for that, but how'd you go about it?
I think one of the important parts early on is deliberate hiring. So multiple interviews, nothing too crazy, but a screening, an in-office. You're probably going to talk to one person for the screening. Thumbs up. We think this person could be a fit. Let's bring them in the office. You'll talk to 2 people at least. Shadow with somebody. That person is also interviewing you. I think sometimes we forget that they have choices.
Yeah.
Like organizations like, I'm interviewing you. Like, actually, if you're getting the best talent, they're interviewing you. And you need to make sure that your place is a place for them because they got a lot of options. And that's the type of people that y'all are trying to attract, the best of the best. So like, let's not act like this is the only place they got an opportunity at, right? So they need to see what they're going to be doing and hear it from other people that aren't just us. So go sit with a carrier rep, sit with the customer rep, do both of those things, ask questions. Like, I don't want to be there. I want you to ask them things that you wouldn't ask me, because then you're going to get the real and you can make a decision to like, this is the place to be. I also think all of us learned this at Coyote. They had an incredible training program. That's top of the top, right? I remember coming in and saying that, and on the way out, I had Alicia Clockey as my trainer. It was the last training class that she did. And I was like, this is the best training I've ever been in. And I just left Kimberly Clark. And Kimberly Clark at that point was like a $14 billion company. And I got great training there. I was like, bro, this is night and day.
Yeah.
And Kimberly Clark's training was not bad. It was very good. But that was so much better. So I think I learned a lot from seeing that and going, okay, let's not try to reinvent the wheel. Bring people in classes. Make sure that there's camaraderie built. Make sure that you're really deliberate about what your values are, why you do business the way you do it, regardless of how long somebody's been in the industry. Because just because they have experience doesn't mean that they're going to do business the way that you want them to. And then make that whole process really, really structured. And then from there, you're going to weed people out that don't fit with the culture because they see the way y'all do stuff. And so either they exit on their own or you realize that it's not a fit and that you have to offer.
How do you minimize that is something I want to know. Because I think it's difficult, especially if someone's not a blank slate, like out of college. You can't just, well, I'm going to kind of, this is the values that you have and that you work hard, but I'm going to mold you, as opposed to bringing someone in with experience and trying to see if there's actual fit. Like, how do you pick that out and say, oh, this person, based on our 1 or 2 interviews, seems to have like a proper fit?
I think you're asking more questions around them as a person to understand, does the way they govern themselves match with the way you all govern the business? So they can be an extremely high performer, but if they're not a good person, or you can land as many shippers as you want, but if you're really mean to people and condescending and rude and you make the environment poor, like, I want nothing to do with you.
Bad apple spoils the bunch.
100%. So I need to understand them as a person. There are some criteria, hoops to jump through to make sure that they have the intangibles and have done some stuff to validate, the salary they're looking for and the experience, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But are they that type of person? And that just comes from interviewing a lot of people.
Yeah.
And being really, really deliberate about the process. Like, you should both be interviewing. And then there should be another person. Not that we don't need to string the process out, but like, screen, see people in the office, get some info from some other people, thumbs up, let's get the check, right? Because you might miss something because that person's like on their game. People can interview really well. If they're good salespeople, they're like selling you. But you and the person they shadow with, they might pick something up and go, man, like, I remember we did one sitting across. I didn't run this interview. There's a carrier rep shadowing with one of our reps. And so they don't know who's around them. But I hear them talking to the rep, and it is a crazy convo, like really inappropriate, talking about like, oh yeah, I rip this customer off and I make a bunch of money, and I'm like, what? We cannot hire this person.
Yeah.
But then the rep who they shadowed with was like, hey, just a heads up, like I'm sitting with this rep. Like your team is going to guard that as well. So they don't need to be in all the stuff, but like it's helpful.
Well, I feel like that it can be hard to pull that out of some people. Some people are good at masking that.
You're going to miss.
So do you have any, exactly. 100%. Are there any specific questions you like to ask that can help bring out these little subtleties to maybe kind of pinpoint, or is there anything like you would recommend people who are interviewing? Like example would be us, we're young in this journey, and Rich and I have a lot of experience, but we're not necessarily HR experts either.
Yeah.
And
I think, so I don't know if I have any really good questions that certainly elicit the responses that'll allow you to know if someone is about it or not. But I think asking similar questions allows you to compare answers.
Yeah, see how consistent they are if they're bullshitting.
Yeah.
cool.
That's helpful. Also, I want to ask people questions that have nothing to do with freight to see what they say, because here's a good question for like a salesperson, as an example. What outside of your career are you excited about achieving? I just want to know.
Yeah.
I don't really care what you say. I'm just intrigued, right? Are there other things that get you going besides this whole freight thing? Because we know the market does a whole lot of this. And I just want to know if there's something else that's going to keep you moving. Am I saying that if someone doesn't have a good answer, you shouldn't hire them? No. But you're going to learn a lot about them as a person if they give you a little bit of an insight of like other stuff that drives them.
Yeah. And also sometimes you can tell that they're just catering to what you want to hear. And that's, it's like, we want to know what makes you tick.
Correct.
And it's not just like the company's success is really what gets me going. It's like, sure, it gets all of us going, but what makes you tick personally?
And if you're a carrier rep and you save money, then that's a great answer.
It's an incredible answer. It's not a bad answer at all, but like, let's call a spade, bro. I'm here to get a job. What do you think?
We always say too, and I guess we're giving away some, but it's very similar for everyone. When you're talking to a salesperson, you say, what motivates you? And they don't mention anything about income. It's a little red flag because you want that. You want that hunger.
Yeah.
But we've run into that a few times. It is good advice, though, to split the interviews up, because I think when we first started, Bryan and I were both jumping on together and interviewing, and I mean, it went fine, but we found like we got a lot more insight when we started splitting them up and going, all right, you do it first, and if you like them, we'll double down.
Yes. I think early on, the things that seem like they take a lot of time save you a lot later. So I heard someone mention this a couple days ago. From a coding perspective, they call it technical debt. So if you go to build a product, but you cut corners, you're just incurring technical debt that you'll have to undo later. You'll have to bring in someone that's qualified to like rebuild what you built because you cut corners. You're like incurring technical debt. We do the same thing in business. If we try to cut corners and say, I don't have time for it, you say you don't have time for it today, but you're going to have to undo it in a year when it's fucked.
Wow.
And so bro, you tell me I don't have 15 minutes to talk to this person? I don't have 15 minutes to talk to this person. That's just untrue. If you don't have 15 minutes to talk to this person, our business is broken. So we got other stuff.
It could be thousands of dollars involved with that mistake.
100%.
So we get that. And also that we spent a lot of time when we first started building this, trying to set up an infrastructure that will last, because we know that if you have to switch big, significant things after you've already rolled out and launched, like that is a multi-month and thousands of dollars gone into it. So, I mean, just good advice in general.
I don't mean to like go off on a tangent too much, but like, that's how I feel about training. Hard stop, right? Like organizations that we come in and do consulting with, we always do a pre-consulting survey to understand what exists so we can assess how to help most effectively. And when the answers are, we don't do any training, they just sit with reps, they shadow. They sit with Johnny and they do what Johnny does. Blows my mind. That's like 90% of the people we talk to. And the answer is, we just don't have time, right? We don't have the resources. We don't have time. Okay, great. So you don't have time for the people who do the job on a daily basis, the interface with your customers and carriers. You don't have time to teach them how to do it right. And they're the reason why you exist.
You're really the face of your organization, right? If they're doing something wrong, then it reflects on you directly.
Yeah, crazy to me.
So you touched on a lot of things in terms of the training aspect. I can appreciate anyone from Coyote, and there's a lot of people hopefully listening to this nodding their head because the training there was awesome.
Incredible.
What's a little more difficult is for maybe some of the people who run a smaller company or similar to ours right now. We're full-time remote in the U.S., working on getting that first location in the U.S. up and running. TBD sooner than later. But how do you train? What is your advice on training remotely and still keeping that culture when everyone's spread out all over the country?
I got a hot take on that one too.
Oh, I love it.
Okay. So I had the opportunity to build a remote office before we went remote for COVID, right? So before it was a necessity, we had a team in Colombia. I stood that team up. I had to go to Colombia and like hire people, understand how to put the right people in place, all that good stuff. And it taught me how to communicate really well at a high level because I was there once a quarter. So the only way for people to understand the culture and how we did things at a high level was to over communicate and then also make sure the information was really easy to get and super clear. But I messed that up a lot early on, assuming that it would be easier. And then you realize, oh shoot, I'm not in the office with them every day. So there's just stuff that we're going to miss. I need to overemphasize certain things. Then boom, we go remote. For COVID, we've got a 100% remote customer-facing sales team. Some green, some experienced, right? So that first phase was more entry-level training, teaching people how to do the X's and O's in freight. Now it's March of 2020. We've got sellers talking to really big customers all across the board, new, still learning how to do. I'm like, okay, we're still hiring. We can't stop this machine. We have to really focus on one-on-one time with people. I really need to get to know them as an individual because I can tell what's going on more effectively if I spend more time with Rico one-on-one, even on a Zoom. I can tell if you're like down or up. I see you every day. Just because you're remote, I can still read what's going on, but I had to like really focus on that and like help teach managers how to focus on those types of things because you can get the same types of results, but it's so much harder because it takes a higher level of focus because I can't just like walk over and say what's up. So I think a lot of people use remote work as a scapegoat for why people can't perform. And I think it's on the organization to focus harder on the structure and the processes and getting to know people. If you can do those things well and communicate, my entire team's remote, like you're not gonna catch us in an office ever.
Yeah. Well, especially if you're bringing them in and you're hiring them remote from the get-go. Like the expectations are set. You need to perform in this environment. So
And how do you reinforce the culture of your company with those folks remotely?
I think culture is a lot of times people think it's like perks or these things that you talk to people about in training, but culture is what silently governs how you make decisions. So when no one's in the room and no one's going to tell you that's the right or wrong thing to do you do the right thing? That's culture. So the only way to get people on board with that is to show them examples of how and why you do things like, hey, here's how we interact with each other. Here's how we talk to each other. This is why we do this for customers. Here's an example of why that was important. I need to show you why. And that's going to be madly different than places that they ever came from if you want to do it a different way. But they need to think about, okay, I'm about to respond to a customer. They said something, I didn't like it. Do I come off hot? Do I say something mean back? Same thing with the carrier, right? Carrier was rude. Do I respond back? Or do I think that's not how we do things here? So let me take a beat, hang on for a second, maybe take a lap and respond 5 minutes later with a more appropriate response because that's how our team works. But you got to show the way. And you can do that same thing remote. I think you can do it in a remote environment. So.
Right. That's really interesting. Yeah, I've heard people talk, and I think I read this somewhere too. If someone were to ask all of your employees individually, like what are the pillars of your company, and not something that they just memorize, but what's most important about being like a hoplite or being someone at Journey. And if they all answer relatively the same, then you know like your culture is like congruent across, and they all understand like what the values are. And you have like, because again, yeah, it isn't just perks. It's kind of like a mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're interviewing, kind of what are the top characteristics you're looking for out of someone? You know the type of employee we would want, because I think we kind of come from a similar background. What are you looking for?
So 2 ways to approach it. Internal hiring for Journey and then screening to help find really good talent for our recruiting clients. So internal for Journey, I am extremely deliberate and I move quick, but not hastily. So the two recruiters I have on my team, I knew for like 6 months before they came on full time. And I wanted to just understand who they were as people. We weren't necessarily really, really in need of another full-time person to do that function. But I was like, man, I like this individual. I think they have the right characteristics to go and do the job. Talking about Morgan specifically first, and then Nikki was our second full-time recruiter. But I spent time getting to know them. Hey, how would you approach this problem? You've been an agency recruiter. Like, tell me a little bit about how this works. They're both doing their thing. They're not in need right now, but they're like, this place could be cool. This is interesting, right? So for me, just a very deliberate vetting process, and then understanding if we slotted this person in, could they come in immediately and make an impact? Because we're a small organization, so there's not like time to kind of kick our feet around and figure it out, right? But that was, 6 months of getting to know that person. As we're screening people for clients right now, we won't introduce anyone that we wouldn't hire if Journey were a brokerage. That's it. And so because our business is so unique, there are 3 businesses inside of it: recruiting, consulting, and training. They all lift each other up. There's really no pressing need for us to have a high volume of placements every month just to have them. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in placing people who will be at the organization for a long time and make an impact, because these people trust us, and that's why they came to us. So if we make poor placements, they're not coming back. And the person that was hired is going to leave and hate us, or they're going to hate that organization. It's not going to be like, I'm not interested in that at all. I want really deliberate, really focused, high quality talent, places where they can succeed. And if we wouldn't hire them, if we were a brokerage, we do not introduce them. So like our screening process is bananas.
For both employer and candidates?
Dude, it's nuts.
What happens if there's an employer where you're like, I just don't like the culture? You just, okay, no thanks, I'm not going to take you on?
Correct.
Okay.
So I have told a couple of very large organizations that it wasn't a fit for us to recruit for them, and not in a like rude way. I would never be rude. I do not want to burn bridges, but if the business isn't run in a manner that allows me to feel comfortable that someone leaving a company that's really successful can come here and have the time to do their job well, and then have the support of the organization, why would I want to represent that brand?
Well, it's tied to your company's reputation.
I look bad,
Yeah.
right? But the other part, go ahead.
You just sound like snake salesman or oil salesman.
Just terrible.
Snake oil salesman.
Yeah.
Snake oil, man.
Yeah,
Sorry.
slippery.
I need more coffee. But yeah, I mean, if they come in and they feel like you placed them strictly out of money, that gets around, and then you're gonna have trouble getting good candidates. So
terrible. I have no interest in that.
Yeah.
And there are months where the consulting side of our business is the lion's share of the revenue, and that supports the recruiting side at times. There are times where the recruiting side is the lion's share of our revenue, and that supports the training and the consulting side. There are times where the training business is cranking and it supports the other. So it's symbiotic, right? And I think that allows us to work more effectively with clients, because it's not pressure, right? I don't need to place this person. I don't have to get this placement. We work really hard, but our placements are way more tailored specifically to what that company needs and what the candidate wants, what they're looking for in the next move. And so for me, I'm like, I don't know, man, if I'm sitting there, I've been on the other side of getting resumes from organizations. I don't want 30. I want 3 I'm supposed to hire. I want the ones that are really, really, really good, because that's what we're paying you for personally. And so I think of that as I talk to our team. I'm like, look, only introduce yeses. There's no maybes and there's no nos. And we have an internal process where they screen and I'm thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm like, I wouldn't hire this person, so they could go somewhere else, but like can't introduce them to this client.
Yeah. I know when I took on more of a hiring role, previous position, and working with a lot of different recruiting companies, is like you'd get excited when certain ones would send you a candidate versus other ones, because some was just quantity, and other times you're like, oh, like perfect. Like I know when they bring the heat. This is gonna be someone I probably like, but yeah, man, well said. Like I think you know what you're doing, obviously, but I think you're going about it like a perfect way, and it's not surprising that you guys are growing so fast. But
Dude, I appreciate that. I mean, I've learned a lot, right? It's been a year since we started this business. The phases of the organization have come out over that time. So recruiting first, then consulting, then the training piece, month over month, learn a little bit more. And like, there's trial and error to the whole process, but I feel incredibly confident about the way we go and find talent and partner with the right types of company. And then a lot of those organizations, right types of companies, a lot of those organizations also do consulting. So a lot of our recruiting clients are also consulting clients. A lot of our recruiting clients also use our training platform. So there's a lot going on that makes it a lot easier to know the company and then be able to identify candidates that would be a fit and vice versa. Like we'll come across candidates and client might not be hiring, but I'm like, you would want this person because we understand their business. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's great. I mean, it's very fluid, and I feel like it just keeps opening up doors, revolving the more you're picking out these candidates and talking to these employers and future clients. I do want to ask on the sales training part, because I find that really interesting. With my background with customer sales, I was in the first training class for customer sales that they ever offered at Coyote, and I always wondered, that was very different way back then. What's that?
Humble brag.
Humble brag. Yes. Humble brag. Sorry. Yeah, and I always wonder when you're looking at all these sales training programs for these employers that they have, like what percentage are solid and what percentage are not so great? I mean, did what we have at Coyote, was that like top class, or were we just okay?
So most of the sales training that I see that's shipper facing sales is terrible. It is so bad. It doesn't exist. Rico, call some customers.
Yeah.
Let us know what they say. I'm not even joking. Yeah. There's no process, nothing to teach you how to handle objections. There's no criteria of what a good or a bad customer is.
Why is that? Why are so many lacking? It's just they don't want to spend the time and resources on it?
I think there are two different types of problems. One is you have an incredibly talented entrepreneur who is leading the organization. Typically, early on, the lion's share of that revenue is tied to that entrepreneur because they have relationships with shippers and they're pounding the pavement doing their thing. And you can liken that person to Michael Jordan, who is a great contributor and a terrible coach. Can't transfer this information. Don't know how to but I can go put up numbers. So they're putting up numbers. There's no knowledge transfer. I'm not saying that's bad. I actually think the best organizations we work with have executive-led sales efforts, but they also have really strong management, director, VP leaders to push the sales team. But their execs are crushing because they can get into conversations that some of the other people want. Like you know that. Yeah. It's important, right? But in some of the small organizations, you got an owner, they got all the customers, and they never really teach people how to do it. And then they're like upset when they hire someone and they don't immediately add a bunch of shippers. Oh, this person told me they knew how to do the job, but like there's no guidance, no structure, no one telling them what good or bad is. They're just like, why didn't you add a bunch of companies? So there's a lot of that. And then the other part is no focused effort on writing down processes and then using that to train the next person. So Rich, let's say that he's got a bunch of shippers building the business, doing his thing, but he starts to write down, okay, like here are a couple email examples that worked. They got these companies interested. Here's where I found a couple of these. It seems like we're really good at refrigerated. We do pretty well with like time sensitive freight. And there's a little bit of open deck niche, like that's our thing. And you start to write down the customers that fit into that niche and how you got them. That's your training manual for your first hire. And that's better than what most companies have.
Give them a clear focus.
Better than what most have. And then you train that person. And I don't care if it's a day or a week, like just do something and then check in with them. Hey, how'd it go? What's going on? And then once they're up to speed, they add to that. Okay, here's what worked. These customers seem to be responding better. Our niche, well, we said it was open deck, but we only really have like two, like it's food and beverage, time sensitive. Like we crushed that. Okay, cool. Let's find all the customers that fit in that niche.
So are you like giving them a playbook, or are you helping them build one?
Both. Okay. So when I first started the consulting stuff, I assumed that every engagement would be different. I was like, man, they're all going to be so different, right? Like different companies, some assets, some non-asset, dry van, open deck. They're almost all the same because there's little to no go-to-market strategy. We know what a good go-to-market strategy looks like because we came from an incredible organization that taught us the fundamentals of how to go acquire new business, set up a strong carrier network, rinse and repeat. But we were incredibly fortunate, like super lucky to get exposed to that, right?
Right.
Most organizations have never seen what that looks like at scale. So the first thing we're trying to do is build a strong go-to-market strategy so that they know this is a good customer, this is a bad customer, these are our modes, these are our services, this is our value proposition. Here are customers in our book today that we like, and here's 1,000 other ones that look just like them. If we start there, night and day difference in terms of how we go and solicit and add business. Now we're hyper-focused. And the more focused you are, the easier it is to add more business because we can sit here and talk all day and like blah, 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 do all this stuff. But if open deck's not good for you and you're really good at refrigerators, stop talking to open deck customers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not good at it.
We don't do it well.
Don't say you can do everything if you can't.
It's not important.
Focus.
What, sticking with the startup theme, at what point would you advise a growing and new brokerage to start honing in on that, focusing it?
So I think the mark's probably somewhere between 10 and 25 mil because that revenue in the beginning is going to be owner, exec, maybe first high level hire. So y'all are just wheeling and dealing. And that's kind of fun, right? Like ain't nothing wrong with that. It's fun to wheel and deal, right?
It's a fun bunker that we're all just
Every
taking and throwing
success
grenades
feels
in.
incredible.
You're in the trenches right now. That's the best part.
It's very fun.
It is, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't scale.
No.
So learn from it. And then before you make that first hire, feel comfortable that you know what your go-to-market strategy is because the beauty of what you two are building is that you are wired differently. That's why you're building an organization. You have some intangible skills that allow you to like finesse things and read situations and still get the desired outcome. Most people, they don't have that. They need clear structure. They don't really do well in the gray ambiguity. So let's lessen the gray ambiguous. Y'all could keep wheeling and dealing. That's why you're good at what you do. Let me give you a little structure. And then it gets more and more structured. That's why you see the top 20 multi-billion-dollar orgs run laps around the rest of the field because they can go do it structured. The killers go do their thing and they weed out the people that don't work. Rinse and repeat.
Well, I'd like to thank Jeff and Marianne for that because that structure and process is ingrained in my brain. And hey, it's nice.
It works.
It works.
One question I want to circle back to, and I know we're getting close on time here, but you mentioned salespeople and the long leash and what expectations are when you bring them in.
Oh, yeah.
I've been at a few organizations now. Everyone had different expectations on how quickly there should be an ROI with the experienced salesperson.
Yep.
So in your opinion, you're thinking 3-6 months, how's that differ from someone who's green? Like, I know it changes depending on the candidate and what their book looks like, but in general, what do you kind of think of that? Because everyone differs on that topic.
Got another hot take.
Yeah, let's go.
So books of business do not transfer. So you're hiring for sales acumen.
The person.
Correct. You're not hiring the book of business. And when I say they don't transfer, I really mean the immediate impact won't be there. So they may have a non-compete or non-solicit. Cool. You know, the company's already or the customer's already entrenched with their previous brokerage. It's probably a RFP cycle or two before you can re-engage them and get going. So at best, 12 months, 18 months to get some of these really heavy hitting shippers that love the company. And Rico happened to be the guy, but like it's going to be a minute before I can migrate that business. So we're hiring for the person, not for the book. And clients of ours, prospective clients of ours that are like, go get us heavy hitters. Like they got to have a book. I'm like, that we are not going to do well with you. So we don't onboard companies like that.
Yeah.
But to your original question, like how long, like what's the ramp look like? It's different. Green, an SMB rep, a mid-market rep, an enterprise seller. But companies need to look at what do they need that person to produce in what time frame to allow them to sit in the seat long enough to ramp. And that's different depending on the style of shipper that you sell to. So you know this, if I'm calling Kraft and Coca-Cola, good luck, buddy, 12, 18 months until I'm really in there.
And what's the salary that they're going to command to come in? So you have to be comfortable with that too.
Correct. And so like we've had some really interesting conversations with companies that have unrealistic expectations of what a seller should produce. I had somebody tell me, no lie, that they wanted reps to produce 10K and 100 loads their first month.
Well, they're just trying to buy a book then.
I said, this conversation was riveting. I must go. I'm like, oh, God, that's crazy, right? Like, that's just not going to happen. But there need to be signs that the business is on the way. And you can see that 30, 60, 90 days in based on the way the person works. So let's say you hire somebody January 1st. That whole first 30 days is a wash. They're getting comfortable with Rico and Rich. Like, they're getting to know you, the TMS, the company, the day-to-day stuff. They're making some solicitations. Maybe you give them like a week of orientation. Month 2, we're playing ball.
Yeah.
We need calls set up. You need to be cranking with your KPIs, like whatever we say the KPIs are. And early in my career, I thought KPIs were like the end-all be-all. It's more about production. But I can't get in shape if I don't do the work. And I can't build a book if I don't call customers. So the first 30, 60, 90 days, I need the KPIs to show that you're doing the work. And they got to be with the right type of customers. And the messaging needs to be dialed so those customers are responsive. But I can tell, hey, man, if Rico started here, it's been 31 days, and he's doing his thing with solicitations. They're with our ICP, and his messaging is good. He's doing some cold emailing, he's doing some video prospecting, cold calls, things of that nature. And until he sets up like 2 or 3 meetings, I'm like, bet.
You can feel someone's grinding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're showing signs that it's working, but we should start to get, if this is SMB or mid-market, different for enterprise, we should start to get a couple quotes. We get a couple conversations, month 2, probably get my first load or 2, start to make some, hey, your best reps, they might do 25, $3,000, $3,500 month 2, because they are previously experienced, have a couple companies they can pull over that are like easy to talk to, and they know how to do the thing. Now month 3, I need a couple more meetings set up. Probably want 1 to 3 customers. Been doing this for 65, 70 days. Like, we need to start putting logos up. And it's not going to be the end all be all customers, but these are the ones that help cover your seat cost off the rip. So I think you have to organizationally say, how long can I invest in this person before we have to make a decision that this doesn't work? And if that investment is like 1 or 2 or 3 months, just don't hire salespeople.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, you said something that kind of interested me that I want to dive into just for a minute. Hiring sales folks. So one of my first thoughts was, what can I do that's creative or different to really understand, not like the person and their qualities as an individual, but their sales acumen. And I thought, like, well, is negotiating with somebody during an interview like a good step? Is that too far out of the box? Like, what do you think are some ideas that, okay, maybe you could try this to really understand what their sales abilities are in an interview?
So I think if you're doing like a second interview, someone's like going through the screening and then y'all are meeting with them for another time and you're like, this person could be a fit, I would have them prepared to sell you as if you were a shipper, because you know they've done it before. And let's not make it complex. Just like, tell me as if you still work at the brokers that you work at today, and I'll tell you, like, I'm a food and beverage shipper. I move XYZ out of these markets. Here's what you learned about me. Prepare them for the role play, like we used to do when we do mocks.
Yep. I remember that.
Cool. Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit in the beginning. Last 15 minutes, it'll be a role play.
And hopefully we could potentially use your tools for that, right? Maybe.
All I'm saying is just some people that use the role-playing tool as an interviewing tactic. So you send the rep a bot, and then you can listen to them talk to the bot. It's kind of cool.
I mean, I think about if we're one day at the point where we're hiring out of college and we're wanting to mold these guys, like being able to have that and be like, help me find like the absolute dogs.
It's so cool to be able to get the immediate feedback, and then you don't have to be in the room. So you program it the way you want it to respond based on the type of customer it's supposed to be, and see how they do.
Yeah. Wow.
Last question for me, man. One characteristic that stands out above the rest when you're interviewing, you're like, non-negotiable, that's the most important to me. What would it be?
Sales for salespeople?
Yeah.
I think it's the ability to persevere, because sales is a marathon, not a sprint. And if you are not willing to get told no and get no information for a long time, you're not going to make it. We can call customers as much as we want, email them. A lot of it is timing. Man, RFP season is cracking right now. If I miss the RFP, there's not really much I can do about that. So if I'm the kind of person that is really, really down with, if I get down because of things outside of my control, sales is not for me, because there are a lot of things outside of your control. What you can control is your effort and your attitude. And so if you're willing to persevere through the challenges, I've had reps that month 1 was tough, month 2 was tough, month 3 had some signs of life, month 4 little signs of life, but they're not a rock star. Month 5 is decent. Month 6 we're on plan, but like they're okay. Month 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 we're cranking because they brought the same effort and they're talking to the right type of customers that we transact with well, but they just never stopped working at the same clip. Every day, same clip, focused. I have a specific person I'm thinking about. He's going to know who he is when he sees this. But like his first 6 months had come from the ops side, new freight, never sold, terrible on the phone off the rip, really bad with cold calls, really wordy with emails. And we just grind it day after day. Let's role play together. Let's cold call. Let's sharpen your pitch. And then we just start to pivot the ship. Built a $100,000 book of business, cranking. Right?
Resilience.
Took the first 2 to 3 years to get there, but was covering his seat costs 6, 12 months in.
Yeah.
Just not a rock star. Neither of y'all would have looked at this person and been like, they'll be a top 3 to 5 rep. Top 3 to 5 rep in most brokerages today, hands down, because of the consistency. So like, you got to persevere. Like customers don't turn on immediately.
Yeah. I love it, man. My favorite quote is actually by Charles Swindoll. And it's a long quote, but at the end he says, I'm convinced that life is 90 or 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react. And I always try to keep that front and center. Yeah, you got to be resilient. I love that. But,
100%.
Well, hey, man, appreciate it. Thanks for jumping on. You're the man.
Thank you for having me.
It's
I
always
appreciate
fun.
it. Dude, now we got to get a better handshake.
Oh, man.
Dude, I'm proud of you guys. It's really, really cool to see people that I've known for a long time go out there and figure out ways to build incredible businesses. So it's really cool to watch. But
Thank you, man.
proud.
Really appreciate
it. Likewise to you, man. Love to see things taking off. And
Thank you.
yeah, if you guys are looking for any training needs whatsoever, any recruiting needs, Will's your guy. You know, that's episode 4 of the Ramp Up. If you have any suggestions, anything you want to see, please hit us up. Let us know. We're excited to do this, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
The ramp up, never hit the brakes, break it down day to day, show the